Okay, so basically, a person's knowledge base that they learned, their religion or whatever, isn't isn't the problem. God, or whatever the person's perception of the higher power is, isn't the problem. So the religions are there uh, as a guide, as to help. The higher power is there for the person to have a personal relationship with. Like, that's all good. So when you see wars and people hurting another, it's not because of what they learned in their religion, or because they believe some higher power is telling them to do it. It's because of this mechanism here, right? So that's what people need to learn. So when this person sees another person down here doing something, they might blame the religion or the higher power. But in actuality, it's this defense mechanism that's being triggered. And it's not the religions or the higher power. It's the people themselves that are the issue when you look at it from this perspective, right? When you look over, right? What do you see? You see, when you start looking at it, you see all the pain and everything people are causing each other, and it's it gets you, it kind of gets you upset. It kind of makes you feel like the whole world is lost. But this would be the part one. So it's not the texts or the higher power. If you're looking to blame, it's people's lack of knowledge. Right? A good example would be, you could go into, I'll just do this right quick, the Bible, right? They talk about Jesus when he was on a cross. Um, he looked around as a human. He looked around, thought about everything they were doing to him, what they're doing to his people. So the story goes, right? If you just look at the historical story, when this, because he had a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, when this opened up, when he reached that moment of immense emotion, and this opened, he voiced, like the story goes, he said, Father. So he looked above himself, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. And you can obviously see that people act the way they do because they don't understand they're letting this control their actions, right? They're kind of on autopilot. So that's one way how you can use a historical record to kind of, oh, well, yeah, we're humans. This is what happens, and that's what happened in that story, right? Now, like I said before, with people that have hypnagogic experiences and dream a lot, they might actually have what they think, and it could be all the different aspects of it. They might think that their personal relationship is even closer because it follows suit with a lot of the information that they learned from these old texts, right? But yet, these people could say these people are wrong and try to damage their mechanism if they have one. So basically, this knowledge here is showing you kind of a picture of a vision that I had a while ago, and then took like a long time to kind of reflect upon it, and yeah. So in my vision, I kind of seen all that and was saddened by it, and then I got angry by it, and then kind of it was a really good vision. I'll have to explain the difference between visions, lucid dreaming, and everything to you guys in a different episode. All right. So just try to remember that um, tolerance isn't something that we want to do. It's understanding. You don't want to tolerate somebody because of this, right? You want to understand somebody. And if you understand them and this person understands them, then more learnings can happen, right? Tolerance has a breaking point, but understanding is the direction that we need to go in. This will be continued on a bit later. Thank you. Okay, so let's take another look at this here. Now, I'll explain this a little bit more different this time. We have your higher power up here. We have personal relationships. So to some people, because of where they live, their environments, what they were taught, this might be the universe, right? Other people, this might be Allah. Other people, this might be God. We're all different as humans. Some people can picture things really well. Some people get more of a feeling. So somebody that pictures, will say, this higher power as an intense light. Other people might just have more of a feeling towards it. Other people put faces to it, and so on and so forth. So this, will say, there is the human mind, and this here, all this part right here, is all the information that you've learned. So that's, your school, the different religious teachings you were brought up with, the different things you learned, and so forth and so on. Now, this part, like I said, is that little mechanism where if something happens really tragic to a person, or really, really good to a person, then this mechanism here will get triggered, and they'll look to something that they feel is higher than their ego, than their conscious mind. And they look towards this higher power, which they could look at as the entire universe, or God, or Jesus, or Allah, or Krishna, or whoever they picture that to be. What we're going to focus on is this spot right here, because that's usually, when you hit that point, that's usually a really emotional point, and emotions do get stored and can get stored. In NLP, basically they use a principle where you can concentrate on an emotion and then move your hands in certain ways, or touch a body, or touch something in a certain way to kind of anchor that emotion in place. So if you were practicing for stage fright, you could, anchor these two fingers together after you've concentrated on being calm a lot. So when you walk out on stage, when you touch your two fingers together, that feeling of calmness appears. So I'm not going to get into much detail with that right now. It's called anchoring. But when people hit this point, a lot of them, and I say this because half of the population believes in have Christian or Muslim beliefs, and there's 4,200 different religions around the world. So this spot gets triggered in a lot of people. Now, like I said, this is the human mind, your conscious and unconscious. This is knowledge that you've learned. This is that mechanism that, upon really intense emotions, will open up to where you have this personal relationship, how, if you feel it, see it, whatever, to this higher power. That's a really good coping skill, right? However, if another person learned through different things and sees this in a slightly different view than this person, then this person, that gets challenged. And like I said, with NLP, like touching the body together will make that emotion, we will recall it, right? So when this gets triggered, it could be something this person says, and eventually that place with all those intense emotions. See, when they do look to the higher power, they could be moving their eyes a certain way, they could put their head down a certain way, and it locks that emotion into the body. So when they meet another person, they could be of the same faith even, but if they have a slightly different view, this could get challenged, and then all those emotions get triggered, and it could be, it's usually anger that pours out towards the other person. It's like a self-defense mechanism gets triggered, and that's where we see friends, family members, people of different religions getting into confrontation with each other, right? Now, the governments have laws and stuff today, so it's a little, they're good in that respect. When the government tries to control this and this, then that's not so good. But if a government has the laws in force, then that's a good way to control that. Not by challenging this, right? Or challenging the different personal relationships, but by letting the people down here know, that their conscious know that if they act out against somebody else, then they'll be in trouble, right? That's basically how the governments, they're not going to lose control by picking a certain religion and going with it and forcing everybody to do it, because that's almost impossible as well. Once you have this personal relationship here, then no matter what anybody else says, the only thing that's going to change how that personal relationship is viewed to that person is their knowledge. And to directly attack their relationship with the higher power puts a strain on that mechanism, and then the people will act out to defend that mechanism without even knowing it, right? Okay, just quick, I want to show you something. I wanted to get into this knowledge base when it comes to the same religion. So if we look into the Quran, chapter 96, verse 16, they talk about a lying, sinful forelock. So basically, they're in that verse, they're talking about a man lies from his forehead. So you could have these four people being Muslims. Let's say this one was Muhammad. So he wrote it, so obviously he knew what he meant when he said it. Now, hundreds of years later, you have a fella here, and they find out that where you lie, it's part of your frontal cortex, or part of your front lobe of your mind. So it corresponds to the verses there. So his interpretation of that story from years ago would be that this information is basically what part of the mind is responsible for lying, and there's no way that this particular person way back who first wrote it would know this, so it would be a miracle. This other person here, who would be also a Muslim, may believe that it's talking about the maybe he figures, well, Muhammad could have been talking about the third eye, right? People talking about the third eye, that they're lying. That stuff's not true, right? Because it would oppose a lot of beliefs. So that's what he might believe. This other person might believe, well, you have to read that verse plus 10 other verses from the Quran to know exactly what he was talking about. So he might believe these guys are wrong. And this other guy over here could be thinking, well, let's say this guy was 400 years ago, before science knew that part of the brain was responsible for lying or not. Then his beliefs might have been totally different from these guys, right? Now that doesn't change their personal relationships with Allah. That's just the information that they have. However, being humans, if one person believes it's third eye and another person believes it's like the actual part of the brain, they could say stuff to each other that triggers this, and get reactions out of each other, and even become not friends because of it. But the same goes for, we'll say, Christians. You have one guy here that reads a verse that says, today you'll be with me in heaven, I swear, type of thing, right? And then over here, he's like, well, you should have a comma in there. So this guy believes upon death, you automatically go to heaven. This person here believes upon death that you go to sleep until you're resurrected, because of their knowledge bases, right? Now what happens is they can become angered toward each other because of this mechanism being challenged, and say that they serve different gods. But in actuality, it's just a lack of understanding. So knowing how this mechanism works and how defensive it can become should open up your mind to what's going on in the people around you. And instead of reacting to those strong emotions coming from them, you kind of understand them. So it's not tolerance, because tolerance really doesn't work. It's understanding. And then once you understand, then you can stop the angered reactions and come up with the more positive flow of information that benefits everybody. Okay, this is eventually what you're going to learn. You're going to learn you have Muhammad, Ellen White, Joseph Smith, Peter, and countless, like hundreds of others, that all claimed to have visions and got divine information from the higher power. So if you're a Muslim with Muhammad, under that section, this other person's dreams and visions, let's say Ellen White, you're not going to believe that hers are true, and vice versa, right? Because that's what you've learned. That's your knowledge base. So what you're going to learn is, besides these people, especially nowadays, visions are another type of dream, and hundreds and thousands of people are having visions, more visions now, but they're not in places of power. Some are, and some are not. So they don't affect the mainstream population as much. So were all these other people liars, right? No. They're not liars because they did have the processes of the visions, right? So visions are another form of dream. Now, do they make them 100% correct? That's the question. So, to put this very simply, let's say you're a person nowadays and you have a vision. And in that vision, because of emotions and everything else, you have like a religious vision. If it doesn't go along with one of these people, then everybody else will say that you were evilly influenced or blah blah blah, and because of what they're saying, it could put a strain on your device and then make you question your personal relationship, right? So basically, this device is present in most humans, and they all have a space, whether it gets cut short and they look above something higher than their ego and ask for help or what's going on, and then it gets cut short because of everything else around them. They don't believe there's a higher power or whatever. Then this becomes more active as you get closer to death as well, this section. So the bottom line is, if you have visions, right, according to mainstream psychology, if you think other beings are putting thoughts in your head, then you're insane. So if you think that visions are actually memories and new ideas forming and playing out, then you'll be called an atheist, right? But you can still have a personal relationship with a higher power and know that your visions are just dreams. Kind of like when Einstein had visions of math equations coming down, or Tesla with inventions, right? You can use your information that you gain from the visions and see what it does, like how it can help, instead of looking at the visions as literal, right? Like, for example, in the vision that I had, I didn't quite understand this part of it, of how people were treating each other and stuff, and I seen people believed they had a certain knowledge base to the higher power, and they were like beating and forcing this other person who already had a personal relationship into their beliefs, putting a strain on that. And I could see the pain that it was being caused. And then I kind of went up and spoke to the presence of God in this vision. And then, make a long story short, became angry. I astral travel, so my memories came into play, and I transformed my astral body into a ball, and then enlarged it so big it engulfed the entire earth, and wanted to destroy the earth with the astral body. And in this vision, the astral body was like the Holy Spirit. So as the Holy Spirit was burning and destroying the earth in this astral form, I came back up here, and then I heard a voice and something was said, and I came back down to earth and retracted my astral form into that small ball again, and then changed it into something else, and went up into the clouds and then descended with many other people. But that was a vision. And then upon reflection, a lot of reflection, I noticed certain patterns of what triggered the vision, what you know what I mean? So for me, where I have emotional and non-emotional visions, when I see these other people, historic people that had visions, I can see how they would believe that they were speaking to a higher power or gaining information from it. Like visions are really unique and strong things. But for me, basically, we'll say this is your mind up here, right? So you kind of preset the theme of the vision before you fall asleep and before you go into that hypnagogic stage or whatever. And you usually take in a question that you want answered or something. And then your mind starts to generate images. Now, you've already preset the theme. So if it's aliens, it'll be aliens. If it's God, it'll be God. And it'll have characters in there. But your memories will come up, and memories combined with memories form new ideas, new pictures, new thoughts to help try to come up with a solution for whatever you preset, whatever problems or whatever you thought was happening. So a lot of people think they're like another force is planting stuff in your mind, but upon like really careful consideration, it's memories, right? Forming new ideas and new things. So for me, in my vision, I don't believe I actually spoke to the presence of God, and that my astral body, my dream, is the Holy Spirit and can destroy the earth. And I don't believe that basically it was a learning experience, right? So these other, like I've had certain visions and stuff. These other people had visions like all the time. They were great at what they did. But that's eventually what you're going to find out is most of these religions, people had visions and believed that those visions were from something else. And once you start having visions and realize how they're made, like lucid dreaming and regular dreams and then visions, that doesn't make you an atheist, right? If I said, that doesn't make the information they provide it wrong either, right? And it doesn't make them liars, right? You can still have a personal relationship with the higher power and know that dreams are dreams and visions are visions. And that's just one thing you're going to come across as you research the different religions and the different things. You're going to come across that. So this is where you want to be. So this is kind of the direction that we're going in. We're going in to learn about human behaviorism. We're going to learn about the processes of the mind, and it's not intended to point fingers at any particular religion or belief, and it's about understanding where these beliefs come from, and how to relate better with one another. So this is a communication. It's about communication and how to improve our lives. And it's going to have sensitive information that's going to trigger this response in a lot of people. But I would suggest that you keep watching, keep learning, and because this here will help, like things that I'm going to discuss will help in your relationships, and it will help understand other people, and it will be understanding instead of tolerance. And there's a lot of interesting things that I've learned over the years, and I see how it helps people. So if you want to learn, keep watching, like and subscribe to the channel. If you're going to use the information I share to help bring understanding, then by all means suggest other people watch it. If you're going to use the information taught here to harm other people's feelings and things like that, then don't bother subscribing. But hopefully we're all in a place where we can be up here and look and see what's going on, understand, and be unaffected by it. Thank you. And the reason why I say what I just said is that when your conscious ego splits and you look to a higher power, nothing else is there, right? So whether this person's visions or dreams or that person's visions or dreams, none of that is there. That's just, you're there by yourself, and it opens up to this relationship to this higher power, which provides comfort to the person. So it's not like, if you don't follow this religion, then this doesn't happen. If you don't follow that religion, then that does. If you don't believe this person's dreams are real, then this doesn't happen. Well, this happens regardless, right? So you can still believe in God and believe visions are a human capability. So like I was saying, you can believe visions are a human capability, and this person over here may think, no, they're divine, or you're being evilly influenced, right? But that's based on knowledge base and teachings. Now this person may get upset that you believe that, but that's not their teachings or the higher power, right? If you believe that, it's because of what you've learned. And yeah, so if one person acts violent towards another, then it's not the higher power, and it's not the religion. It's this defense mechanism, this coping mechanism, right? Because this person may believe that Joseph Smith's, even though he was being truthful about his visions, might have been just visions, and that he was like almost like a psychologist, you could say, that kind of led people into a path instead of inventions like Tesla. But that might really offend that group of people. The trick is always learn and try not to offend these people. Try to learn from them so your knowledge will grow. And that's the whole key, right? Is learning. Okay, now this is a rough drawing of basically the coping mechanism I was talking about. These down here are humans, the human mind. So basically what we have here is men and women and young people, pretty much everybody. So what we have is our ego, our conscious mind. So that's the self, you know, like when you talk to yourself about what things you want to do and all that type of stuff. This here is your knowledge base. So everything you learned and experienced, different religions, everything. And up here is a spot. I'll tell you about that in just a second. Up here, we'll say, is the higher power. So some people will say that's Allah, some people God, some people the universe, all kinds of different titles. And just out of curiosity, if you're in a particular religion, if you got everybody a piece of paper and got them to write down what they thought of as God or Allah or the universe, and asked them to draw a picture, I wonder if everybody would draw the same picture. You know, like, do you experience that as a light or a presence or a person's face or so on and so on? But that's not what I'm talking about right now. What I'm talking about right now is this down here. Okay, so you have your conscious mind and your memories, experiences, beliefs in here. And this part here is basically almost when time stops. So let's say somebody's going through something really traumatic and really painful. When their emotion hits to the peak of that experience, it's when their conscious mind shifts and looks up to a higher power for guidance. So it's, you know, why is this happening, or how come, or, you know, it could be anger, it could be love, it could be all kinds of emotions. But whether you believe in a higher power or not, this little point here, when you hit that point and you say, why universe, or why this or that, you have a lot of emotion built up right there. So you can trap that in your body. So almost like an anchoring point. So you might clench your fists every time you hit that spot, or you might move your eyes in a certain pattern and lock that emotion in there. So that's quite a bit of emotion that gets put to that point. And then after that point opens, then you have your personal relationship with the higher power that you get into, however you perceive it. And this knowledge base is what's going to eventually shape what you perceive in the higher power way. But this part here it's a coping mechanism, and I think it's a very important one, but a very dangerous one, because if somebody else has different beliefs than this person and they start talking, then they could start to trigger off different things and kind of hit that really high emotion area, and then that just kind of comes down like a vent, and you know, that's when confrontations and everything else kind of start. So I'm not talking about your like your relationship with the higher power when you go off and pray or have meetings or any of that type of stuff. What I'm talking about is the times, let's say if you're a Muslim, those really hard times when something's happening, and all of a sudden you get your thoughts out of what's going on and stop and look above and say, help, or what's up. Or if you're a Christian, the same thing. Not when you're praying or going to church or your regular stuff. It's those crucial times when you're experiencing that most emotion, and that split happens when you look above. That's what I'm talking about. So that there is like a doorway that kind of opens up, and then that's the person's own personal relationship after that, and that's men, women, children, whatever. But what happens is when somebody kind of comes close to another person with different beliefs, they start to say things, and it puts a strain on the other person's device, and that's when those emotions can come through. So after that door kind of swings open and you enter that personal relationship with the higher power, there's nothing. It's like a direct communication. There's nobody or no thing in between the human and the higher power. It's a direct communication. Like that's how it feels. And most of the time the person feels more comforted, and so on. But what I noticed is when you look at it from this side over, then you see how everybody's kind of affecting each other's mechanism. And they like in suicide prevention, they say just one more coping skill might have prevented a suicide. So let's take two humans, a male and a female, and one of them, they both have unconscious behavioral patterns, and are like male and females, right, when they're in relationships. So let's say these two are Christian, and the man thinks that he should be higher up than the woman, in between the woman and the higher power, which really it's a personal relationship. So but anyway, so let's say they're doing their regular human behavior, and he looks at it as like an attack from her. Then he might say that the devil or some other force, some evil force, is trying to pit her against him. But in doing so, when you look at it sideways, that's because this got challenged. So now it's venting down and over. So as a response, this might actually weaken her defense, thinking that her relationship with the higher power isn't as strong as she might have thought. And, it's just the way people treat each other is just, when it comes to this spot here, the human side of it, it's not their religion or anything else. It's a lack of information on a lot of it. And then you got these huge emotions stored up that kind of pour down and beat up on the next person's little device, which puts a strain on their mechanism, which allows for a personal relationship. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. So looking at it sideways, you see how everybody treats one another, and you get a little bit angry, I guess. But I can see why. In a lot of older texts, somebody once said they do not understand what they do. And I can see, because he's not deliberately tearing that down, right? It's just his information and lack of that causes the behavior. So that's kind of what this is about, is education. So like when you come across somebody with a belief you never heard of, or education you never heard of, if you ask about it, then you'll see the positive side of this start to pour out, and information will flow free. All right. Thank you.